Hello, my wonderful, wonderful friends. Welcome back to r/NuclearRevenge, where the revenges are absolutely ridiculous and life-altering for the person on the receiving end of it. My friends, I hope you're doing well today, and buckle up, because the post I'm about to read today is a wild one. So in this episode, there's gonna be one long story. OP gets revenge on his girlfriend, who cheats not once, but twice on him. And this story really has the comment section divided. Not a lot of people agree with OP's actions, I'll tell you that. With that said, I hope you stay for the story today and hit that subscribe button for future revenge stories. Let's dive in. This story is titled, Fool Me Once, Shame on You. Fool Me Twice, Face the Consequences. So, I met Jane after ending a long-term relationship. I never thought I'd want to date again, but Jane and I really clicked, and it was such a nice escape. We hung out as friends before moving on to dating, and within 6 months, we had moved in together. I had since gotten over my ex, and Jane and I were doing great, and regularly talking about the future. I was fairly socially awkward, and only had a few good friends before meeting her, whereas she had a large circle of acquaintances and friends she introduced me to, who later became good friends of mine as well. About a year into our relationship, Jane informs me that she had a one-night stand with someone she'd met at the bar. She begs for forgiveness, says she's so sorry, that she wasn't used to alcohol, all the usual excuses, you know. I didn't want to lose this relationship, and having invested so much time thinking about my future with this girl, I believe her. It wasn't easy, and I ended up in therapy for my anxiety, but we worked through it after a lot of talks and crying and long nights. I gradually began rebuilding trust after she reassured me regularly that I was the one for her, and that she was still committed to our relationship. I confided in a few close mutual friends who kept it to themselves. Everything seemed back on track, and I thought we had healed. Another year passes when I notice that Jane seems off. She's gone more often, and she begins to be more protective of her phone, and often, in the middle of the night, I'll wake up to find her on the computer instead of in bed. Red flags began flying. So one weekend, she tells me she's going to her mother's to help her with spring cleaning. I don't really get along with or speak to her mother. Her mother's an incredibly religious woman who is already upset with Jane for living with me before marriage. She wasn't fond of me, which is why I assumed Jane figured it would be a safe bet that I wouldn't talk to her mom. A few hours after she left, I called her a few times and it went right to voicemail. Jane's phone was off. I called her mother, knowing that she wouldn't answer me, and left a voicemail asking if Jane had made it to her house safely. I said I was concerned, as it's been a few hours and I hadn't heard from her. A few minutes pass, and she calls me back. She tells me that she called Jane and couldn't get an answer, as I knew she wouldn't. She started asking when she left, etc., and I told her she left that morning to help her with spring cleaning. This was news to her mother. They had never spoken about any spring cleaning. Jane gets home later that night and seems totally nonchalant. It turns out her phone is still off, so she hasn't even gotten the messages from me or her mom yet. Perfect. I ask her how her day went, and she tells me how much she hates dusting, as there was so much dust on top of the cabinets, and how they had to carry stuff down to the basement, and an elevator would have been nice. All that good stuff. I then decide to let her know that I was aware that she hadn't been to her mom's. So long story short, she admits to cheating on me again, and it all comes out that she had essentially been cheating on me since I had forgiven her for the first time. I was shocked. She knew I was dealing with anxiety and insecurity after the first time, and she constantly reassured me that it would never happen again, and how I was the only one for her. We even talked about buying a place and living happily ever after, and meanwhile, she was messing around with the same dude and had met up with him every so often for quickies during the day. I basically shut down entirely and went to stay with a friend and told Jane that it was over. The more I thought about it, the more my sadness turned to anger, and the stupider I felt for giving her a second chance. I had wasted 2 years of my life and made myself vulnerable to someone I fell in love with, who I thought loved me, and she made a fool of me. Jane was inconsolable. She was calling me and my friend who I was staying with, and spam texting and threatening to show up in hopes of fixing it. She was on the verge of a breakdown, claiming that she would do anything to get me back. She said it was a problem she was dealing with, how if I gave her a chance, she would talk to her therapist, she would give me total access to her social accounts, anything she could do to make it right, to take our lives back to the past. I had had enough. I knew I'd never get back together with her after this, which is when I saw the opportunity to get back at her. I had a plan for revenge. I told her that I wanted to be able to forgive her, but big changes needed to happen in order for me to do that, and she jumped at the opportunity. I told her I needed to be sure that she was serious about our future. First, I wanted to look at renting a bigger place, somewhere without the bad memories. I wanted to start fresh, and she agreed. We were currently on a month-to-month, so I gave my landlord notice and asked her to go through the process of securing us a new lease elsewhere. I then told her that if we were going to learn to trust again, I want to start taking leaps towards an engagement, and the first step would be a joint bank account to prove to her that I still trust her with finances, to which she agreed. I deposited a few hundred into the account. Now that this was set up, I figured that I wanted to ruin her social life, but I knew it would take some more plotting to do that. I told her I'd come back to our apartment, and we stayed there, waiting out the end of the month. We cried together. She was overwhelmingly affectionate, let me watch her delete her social media pages, and made me breakfast most days. She was so sorry. I wanted to scream at her so badly, but instead, I'd ask for comfort and reassurance. I played the wounded animal. We had plenty of makeup sex too, and she was sure to be extra adventurous for my sake, so when I asked if I could take some photos, she was all for it. Shortly before we planned to move into the new place, I told her that I had cold feet. I told her that I didn't think I could do it, that I didn't trust her, and we couldn't move in together, and how I wanted to end it. She was frantic. She was pleading with me not to leave again, and begging for something she could do to fix it. I played victim again, and I told her that I believed our social circle put her up to cheating on me. She swore up and down that no one had any idea, but I asked, "How could I believe you? You lied to me twice before, and I don't trust you around them." She said she'd do anything to keep me in her life, and I told her that we need a fresh start on people in our lives too. I wore her down until she agreed to ghost all of them, and she did. But ghosting wasn't enough. I told her that I needed the bridge to be burnt. If she wanted to get back together with me, she'd need to burn all the bridges with her friends. I told her she needed to message each one of them, tell them how she was better off without them, calling them fake friends, and then block them all. She cried for a long time after that, but if she wanted me back in her life, she'd get over it. I had a bunch of messages from mutual friends asking what the heck is going on, to which I told them it was complicated, and I'd talk soon. A few more days pass, and it's time to move into the new place. We spend the day moving some things in, and Jane is practically giddy talking about our future plans and how we're gonna get married. I tell her to pick up anything she needs from her mom's, and I'm gonna get some stuff from my parents' place, and we'll meet back at the apartment that night. As soon as she leaves, I call my friend, and we pack up everything I brought over and take it back to his place. I then went to the bank and drained our joint account, which had about $400 from me and about $3,700 and some change from her. I then sent an email to Jane's mother, pretending to be an angry ex who had access to my phone. I sent her all the naked photos that I took with Jane. And lastly, I had my friend hit me in the eye twice, swelling it up, and then I blocked Jane and asked two of our mutual friends to meet up with me. And just like that, it was over. I told my friends how Jane had become mentally and physically abusive over the past few months after I caught her cheating. I showed them the screenshots of her chats with this guy. I told them I had to keep quiet to keep the peace, that I couldn't believe what she was doing to me, how it was so out of character, how she threw a remote at me and it swelled up my eye while we were moving, and that's when I knew I had to leave and why I needed to take the money to get to safety. Jane showed up to my friend's house looking for me, and my friend said that he would call the cops if she showed up again while I hid upstairs. I heard how she frantically tried to find me to figure out what was happening, but no one would talk to her. Word spread quick in our circle of friends about her abuse, and she even reached out to the friend she had burnt the bridges with to try to make amends, but it was too late. Everyone hated her. Jane's very religious mother had also disowned her, saying that she would pray for her and cut off her financially for living an unhealthy lifestyle. As far as I know, Jane has spiraled into severe depression. She's trapped in a 6-month lease with no money, no friends to rely on, and no one to help her stay afloat, aside from maybe her former fling that she should probably run to now. I'll be using her money to cover rent on a new apartment for myself, and brought my friend a nice gift for being my accomplice in this. I plan to stay in therapy, both to get over this and to work through my feelings and how low I stoop to get revenge, as I don't want to carry this negativity with me in the future. After that, I plan to relearn how to be single and enjoy life on my own, with the friends I inherited to keep me company. Guys, this story is absolutely absurd, and going through the comments of the post, a lot of people say that the punishment does not fit the crime and that it's way overkill. A lot of people say that OP basically decimated this girl's life in a very, very manipulative and twisted way, and that he's in the wrong for it. But with that said, the revenge is pretty nuclear, and many would also agree that it dips into supernova levels of revenge. Now, before you guys leave your comments on what you think, OP does have an edit where he defends himself, so hold your thumbs and fingers for just a little bit longer. His edit reads, "Before anyone forgets what sub they're in, I know this was a crappy thing to do, but I'm okay with that. And no, I do not agree that this brings me to her level. Screwing over someone who trusted you, who never did anything to break your trust, is not the same as getting revenge on someone who screwed you over. Coming to the sub and complaining about people's morals is like going to the drug subreddits and lecturing people on the dangers of drugs." Guys, leave a comment on what you think of the story. Was OP in the right for doing this to his ex? Did she deserve it for cheating on him 2 times? My friends, that brings us to another end of r/NuclearRevenge. Guys, if you enjoyed this story, be sure to check out the last episode if you missed it. A minister gets OP kicked out of the church, and he comes back with the revenge that exposes the minister of having an affair. Check it out if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.